So we're about to begin our final major event, final plenary talk. You know, we have a saying, we save the best for last. It is with great pleasure and an honor to introduce our final panelists, Dr. and Professor Talitha Washington. I'm going to kind of give a very quick formal introduction and say some informal things. Dr. Talitha Washington is the director of the Atlanta University Center Data Science Initiative and a professor of mathematics at Clark Atlanta University. As the director, she oversees and provides strategic direction of data science across Clark Atlanta University, Morehouse College, Morehouse School of Medicine, and Spelman College to increase the number of African Americans with expertise in data science. Washington is a former program, Dr. Washington is a former program director at the National Science Foundation and a fellow of the American Mathematical Society and the Association for Women in Mathematics. So, well, I mean, I have known, had the fortune to have known Talitha way back in the days when we were graduate students. And I just clearly remember Dr. Valentine Miller also was part of that cohort. And I just remember we were all going through our struggles. She was doing a PhD in applied mathematics, which I refer to basically as a theoretical physicist. But anyway, I just remember, just really just looking up to her and respecting just, you know, like the math that she was involved with was always impressive. And, you know, she went on to become colleagues and, you know, it was very, you know, Talitha had me and some other Black faculty from Brown down to Howard. And, you know, you've always been very supportive behind the scenes. And as I think Hakim basically says it best, you're about it, you know, you're just like, you know, you're one of us. And thanks for taking this time out. And yeah, you're special. That's all I'm going to say. And we all recognize that. So thanks for being here. And the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege and honor to be here. And I'm going to share my screens and we'll see if I can address some of the issues, concerns raised in the chat. Feel free to put whatever you want in the chat, either questions or things that come to your mind or the Q&A. We'll grab them all, as they say. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about how we're advancing data science for the African diaspora with that idea in mind, both in the content of data science and who's doing the data science itself. So first, let's start off with, well, what is data science? So there's a lot of different, I guess, ways people could argue about what is data science. It's one of those terms that really there's still no consensus yet. This is, I think, the best definition I have been able to find so far. The goal of data science is the extraction of useful information from a data set. So you have a data set that could be anything. It could be numbers, it could be text, it could be pictures, it could be what have you, right? And set in mathematics, as we know, that's an undefined word. So you have to tell me what's in it so that I know it's a set. So there's a little bit of fun, axiomatic fun that's at play when we define these things. But once we know what that data set is, hopefully we can extract something useful, either to inform our research, inform what we're doing, perhaps dig a little bit deeper. And SciAm, Journal on Mathematics of Data Science, they look at publishing work that advances mathematical, statistical, and computational methods. And they look at the context of data and information sciences. So some people would argue that information and data are one and the same. Some people see them as different. It's interesting the different ways that people will approach it. And as good old Wikipedia says, there's still no consensus on the definition of data science and is considered by some to be a buzzword. But as they say, it's a lot of fun. So hopefully I've convinced you maybe that the goal really is how do we extract useful information from some sort of given data set. So what does this have to do with physics? So this was it's on a website, towardsdatascience.com, where the person looked at job scopes between a physicist versus a data scientist. So how are they different and how are they kind of similar? So on the left, we have a physicist and on the right, we have a data scientist. They say a physicist, they collect data by doing experiments. Data scientists collect data from data sources. Often it could be that the source comes from the experiments. So in that case, the physicist then could take that data from experiments and then take it to the next step and say, this is the data source. Then we also have the physicists, they analyze the collected data. Guess what? So does the data scientist, they analyze collected data. The physicists build models to explain observed data, predict future data. Guess what? So does a data scientist. And as a physicist, they, if you're in a physics class, you present findings to your professors or your stakeholders, whoever those may be. And data scientists often will present findings to managers or other stakeholders. So there's a lot of similarities between physicists and data scientists. And I myself, I'm an applied mathematician who actually works a lot with physicists because I like to look at dynamical systems and making sense of the world using mathematics. There's a lot of interplay between applied math and applied physics. And so I kind of had to grapple with, okay, so what does it really mean to be a data scientist coming from the trajectory of an applied mathematician? And we kind of do the same stuff. So there's a lot of compatibility when we talk about physics and data science. So just a little bit about me. Where did I start? I started my undergraduate at Spelman College. I initially started as an engineering student, but I didn't want to go to school for 5 years. We have a 3-2 program where it's 3 years here and then 2 years somewhere else. So I was one of those lazy students. So I just wanted something without a lab. So I didn't do physics, obviously, that has a lab. I chose math as a major because I thought that would be the easier major. And I minored in Spanish. Had a great time, played in the Morehouse Marching Band, which is cool, coming right off of homecoming season. Here, I did in the upper right, I did a semester abroad in Mexico, where I actually took mathematics courses, Provinstat and Linear Algebra 2 in Mexico, all in Spanish. That was a lot of fun. And on the bottom right is a book that was given to me by Dr. Ronald Mickens, who, as we know, is a physicist at Clark Atlanta, on difference equations. He gave me that book as an undergrad. I did as any good undergraduate student would do, put it on the shelf, it collected a lot of dust, and I didn't read it. But then I became a grown-up, and my students, this is probably about 2005, they wanted to do a course that looked at non-standard finite difference schemes related to a spread of infectious disease, and we grounded the work in some of his papers. So actually, since then, I invited him to campus, and we've been working together ever since. So, you never know. With students, I always say, be kind to your professors because they could become your best collaborators later. So how do I think about things? Like I said, I'm an applied mathematician, so I like to look at some sort of problem or situation. And I think I look at everything through this lens, be it research or administration. And I like to formulate a model, trying to figure out what's going on, to simplify, to kind of see what's going on. And with that, you have to make assumptions and choices, and then analyze, solve the model. Hopefully we can interpret solutions, draw conclusions, and then validate them or not. Sometimes you have to go back around and report out. So like I said, with data science, it's a lot of this same sort of structure. When you're looking at a problem, you have all this data, you have all this information. How can you make sense of it? Formulate a model, basically do some analysis so you can interpret and draw solutions. When I was a grad student, way back in the day, as Dr. Alexander said, at the University of Connecticut, I looked at a mathematical models of proteins acting as on-off switches. So we can see like U1 is a protein that's active. It gets turned off by U3. And so I look at this system of these proteins interacting with each other, and it's very theoretical because I was trained as like in a classical applied mathematics on the analysis side. And so from there, I was able to construct reaction diffusion equations and then, do a theorem proving it and all the rest of that. So, which was fun. But I wanted to go a little bit deeper into the applications of math, which is what I like to do. So just real quick for the students in the room, what do we mean by this PhD thing that people keep talking about? Well, we can see this this is where we were in kindergarten, this blue circle in the middle. And then we learned a little bit more, and note that this boundary circle here, that's the knowledge as it is known. And every time we kind of level up, either do reading, courses, whatever, engagements, we learn a little bit more. Now, the idea behind a PhD is that we contribute to the body of knowledge and push it out just a little bit. Sometimes people push it out a lot, some people push it out a little bit, and it becomes a lot later when one never knows. It's hard to predict. So the idea of getting a PhD is making a contribution back to the body of knowledge that currently exists. So when I graduated in the year 2001, so from UConn, And in that year and I think physics, our sister discipline could probably share some similar numbers here, but there were 6 Black females that were awarded a PhD in that year. So underrepresentation is a challenge, is an issue. So I literally, I give my students high expectations, also high supports, which is a lot of work, to go on and do the diversification, be that diversification that the field needs. So I've been around. I'm originally from Indiana, born and raised Hoosier. And like I said, I went to Spelman, did a tour in Mexico, went to grad school at the University of Connecticut because I got into one graduate program, UConn. And then I got did a postdoc at Duke where I looked at developing a hormone model in a pituitary gland. So that was super fun under Mike Reed there. And then after Duke, I went to the College of New Rochelle, which is right outside New York City. That was a little bit expensive. So I came back home to Indiana and I was a professor at the University of Evansville where I earned tenure promotion. The next year, turned around, went to Howard and visited there and earned tenure there. Most recently, I was at the National Science Foundation as a program director. I was there for 3 years, had a great time. And now I'm back, I guess, in Atlanta, full circle at the Atlanta University Center. So how did I get into this data science? I think I got into it, maybe it's accidentally, right? I'm an accidental data scientist. Maybe that's a new phrase or something. It's just one of those things that happens. So back in 2011, a colleague of mine in the humanities said, hey, why don't you come over and hang out in my digital humanities lab? And help me co-advise a student. I said, okay. So my first gig in data science really was in digital humanities. So I don't think there's a normal pathway into data science. It's just kind of one of those things. Yeah, that sounds interesting. Let's do it and figure it out. So that I think that's really what started me on it. And then hosted StatFest at Howard in 2015. StatFest happens every September. If you haven't been, go to it. It's great. It's hosted by the American Statistical Association and started by Dr. Nagamble Shaw, one of my professors at Spelman. And then I also went to some workshops because I was just curious, well, how does this data science thing work? And in 2016, I ended up in Utah at the Park City Math Institute, where essentially for 3 weeks, we talked about data science curriculum, data science research. It was great. It was in the mountains. They have programs also for undergraduates, graduate students, and faculty. Fantastic program. That workshop resulted in the curriculum guidelines for undergraduate programs in data science, which really is one of the pillars in looking at data science education. Most of my students have went on to data science or computer science. It's bizarre, even though they grew up in math. My PhD student here, Shea Adekande, he's at JP Morgan, where he's looking at employing cybersecurity machine learning there. So hopefully I can get a cut of his salary or something. Kidding. And when I was at National Science Foundation, I led the IU's portfolio for data science that's improving undergraduate STEM education. So I was able to see what people are doing with data science education across the nation. So that was fun. And I also did a detail in the Convergence Accelerator, which is, we think of interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, now convergence. Convergence of different disciplines to solve problems of societal interest. So here looking at artificial intelligence and future jobs, trying to place people or upskill people using AI, and also AI-driven innovation via data model sharing. So I've just kind of done data science out of just innate curiosity. And while I was at the NSF, it was, I had a great time. Like I said, I was program director there. And in my first year, which is an atypical first year for a program director, that kind of rotates in and rotates out sort of thing. I essentially kind of built and established the first Hispanic serving institutions program, which funded about 40 million and 45 million in the second year. So it was a heavy lift, but it was definitely a fun program to stand up and build. So it really can address how do we do this thing of STEM education in these diverse institutional settings. So that, a lot of fun there. And also helped stand up the Blacks in Government chapter on my way out the door. So those are the two things I'm most proud of there at NSF. So I find myself then now as the director of the Atlanta University Center Data Science Initiative. And I am honored to work with a bunch of faculty, a bunch of students, and a bunch of administrators who are just great. They're open and skeptical at the same time, but they're open to kind of figure out, well, what is this thing and how can we use it to essentially either grow our education or grow our research. Whenever we get confused about how are we going to do A, B, or C, we turn to the model of Atlanta University, which is I'll find a way or make one. And that's what we're doing. So the Atlanta University Center is essentially a grouping, a consortium of 4 institutions. Clark Atlanta University, which is an R2 co-ed, so they have PhD programs. Morehouse College, which is all male, undergraduate only liberal arts. Spelman College, my alma mater, all female, undergraduate only liberal arts. And Morehouse School of Medicine, which is graduate only medical school. And together we have about 9,000 students. Now each school is completely different. And even though we're right across the street, the Data Science Initiative really seeks to bridge that street, because the street in theory is small, but it can be large because we like silos in higher ed. But in bridging those silos, we've been able to bring new innovations. And we at the Atlanta University Center have trained a lot of students who go on and who become advocates in civil rights. So here is a picture of the young Julian Bond, who is a graduate of Morehouse College. And he was the vice chair of SNCC, the Student Nonviolence Coordinating Committee. A lot of our students want to use data science to address these civil rights, to address civil liberties, and to essentially make life better for our communities. And so for the Data Science Initiative, we ground in that strength to really use data to do that as that leverage. So for the Data Science Initiative, we leverage our rich history in social justice and support data science research and teaching with a keen intent to address social justice for Black lives and just be explicit about who we are. So like I said, we work across 4 institutions that are all historically Black colleges and universities, and also the Woodruff Library to increase the number of African Americans with expertise in data science. So why are we doing this? Why historically Black colleges and universities? Well, remember HBCUs, we were established prior to 1964 with a principal mission to be the education of Black Americans. And this was established through the Higher Education Act of 1965. But however, HBCUs, we offer all students, regardless of race, an opportunity to develop their skills and talents. And they're, depending on how you count, there are roughly 101 HBCUs. And we graduate 24% of Black students with STEM degrees, even though we only enroll 10% of all Black students. So in some, if you're looking at the proportionality, we overproduced Black STEM degree recipients. So for the Data Science Initiative, we're leveraging that to diversify the data science field, and also just to be frank, meeting the workforce demand in data science. So we can see the picture on the right where you have the student supply of 23% there. And then you have 23% of educators say all graduates will have data science and analytic skills, so 23%. However, 69% of employers say they will prefer job candidates with these skills over one without. So if the preference is to have data science skills, that doesn't mean it has to be a major, but the skills, well, the numbers don't match. So we're trying to figure out, as the chat indicates, how do we infuse data science across the curriculum in multiple ways and multiple facets. So some of the things that we've been doing with our curriculum is leveraging the AI for All program. So the AI for All is actually a nonprofit, and they look at building capacity for underrepresented groups to do artificial intelligence. And they do this through 3 courses. The first one is Discover AI, next one is Apply AI, and the third one is Career Development. So Professor Yvonne Phillips of Morehouse College has been our faculty lead in really guiding, taking their credential program, but wrapping around a 1 credit hour course around that program. And we found that to be successful, because when we ask them, what is the retention, if it's just a credential, it's not that high. And we actually get asked by a lot of different industry people to do these, to have our students engage in credential programs, but we know the students' time is limited. And we also want to provide supports. So having this wraparound course around this credential program really helps the student dive into it and keeps them engaged in it. So we're going to have the second course in the spring at Morehouse College. And also in the spring, we'll have the first course at Spelman College. And in the springtime, Nielsen IQ, which does data analytics for businesses, we're going to wrap a course around the Nielsen IQ data analytics curriculum, and that's going to be at Clark Atlanta. So we're really trying to figure out, how do we take these credential programs that business and industry want our students to do, but make it an, I don't want to say make it an academic enterprise, but wrapping the academics around that in a meaningful way so that there's real synergy. So we're figuring that out and doing it. We have to figure out what to call those types of courses. So if you have an idea, let us know. Also, we have culturally relevant data science courses here. One of them is data in the African diaspora. As the course suggests, this course is looking at data science topics that impact those of the African diaspora, with a heavy emphasis looking at ethics, bias, validity, fairness of disenfranchised Black communities. The other week, I got a call from one of the instructors who's teaching this right now at Clark Atlanta, and they wanted somebody to come in and talk about data and policing and prosecutorial data. So we got hooked them up, so they're good. But these are some of the topics that they grapple with. It's a 3-credit hour, and it's just an introduction, 0 prereq, to look at this interplay, to think deeper about that. Also, Professor Nathan Alexander, he's a data science professor at Morehouse College. In his basic statistics classes, he actually includes the work of W.E.B. Du Bois. Now, W.E.B. Du Bois was a sociologist back in the day. He was a professor at Atlanta University, and he essentially used data visualizations to tell the story about Black America, to make a point, to advocate for Black Americans. And so he used Du Bois's work in the teaching of his classes. So embedding who we are of the African diaspora to address and advance issues that directly impact us is something that we're really proud to support and highlight. We're working to build the data science minor. The first course in the data science minor is the data in the African diaspora course. And I'm hoping that these proposals for the minor will go through in the springtime. But you know, as we know in higher education, that takes a hot second, so to speak. So the way that I facilitated this was last year, I pulled together a whole AUC-wide team. I have 3 people from Clark Atlanta, 3 from Morehouse College, 3 from Spelman, because each of them will have their own minor, but then also pulled somebody in from Morehouse School of Medicine and also the library, because the library provides support. Morehouse School of Medicine has bridge programs. So getting all these folks to talk, all the faculties from all over, I'm talking sociology, business, just math, I mean, just a little bit of everything, chemistry, physics, you know, everybody's in there, sort of thing. Getting everybody on the same page took a minute. And when it happened, you know, through that whole Tuckman's model of team formation, the storming, norming, you know, when we could start performing and kind of figure it out. So I'm really excited about this group and the work that we've done. And our minor aims to prepare students to obtain, process, analyze, and present complex data, including data related to the African diaspora. And we have these 6 learning outcomes: math, stat, programming, modeling, data curation, ethics, and communication. So each of the minors will be built on this framework with the flexibility that their institution may modify it and tweak it. So I'm hoping for this in the springtime. So we're looking for it. We also, this past summer, hosted an Open Doors by Open Source program that was funded by the Sloan Foundation. Now in data science, there's a whole bunch of intersecting, overlapping ecosystem. One of those is open source software development. And so this program really, it took students and just kind of upskilled them through a post-bac summer program in developing open source software and connecting them also to business by having resume prep, interview prep, and so on. And so we're looking at how do we embed this open source software development into our curriculum. So that's an ongoing project, and we should have a webinar about our findings soon-ish. I'll say soon-ish, maybe January. This past summer, we hosted our first pre-freshman program. It was a pre-freshman summer experience where it was a 1-week program where incoming students from Clark Atlanta, Morehouse, and Spelman would engage in a data science project. They were supported by a research mentor who was an upper-level undergraduate or graduate student, and also a faculty person. So the faculty, they came up with the project. It was very hands-on. We had panels. It was great. And by Friday, it was amazing. They presented some really good presentations because they were able to focus in on their projects, and they used anywhere from Python to Excel to R in those programmings. And these are incoming students, so we're really excited. They weren't all STEM. They were from people from all across the disciplines. Biology, I think, probably was the largest group of students. So it was great to have these different majors come in and all talk data science. So the topics went from discovering police violence with open source police shootings data, to looking at global climate change, to four-year graduation rate for students in their first math course using Alex. So it really was a whole bunch of different topics that the students explored over the summertime. Our presenters were amazing and fantastic. They were our alum, which is always great to have, so the students can see where they can go. And there were also just people in the industry field that really are advocating for data science to increase representation there. So we really are thankful for all the presenters who talked about start from zero. What does a data scientist really do? To what are the insider tips? To how can I myself, I the student, I the faculty member, use data science for social good and positive change. So we really enjoyed the program and all of the speakers who came. This past spring, we had a data challenge for our students where they looked at child trafficking. Now, child trafficking, sex trafficking is a problem. And if we look at some of the data says, and you can see it across the woman's eyes there, that Black women are 40% of all trafficking victims. And so we chose this as a topic and really got involved in this, well, because it's an important issue, and also recognizing that we are disproportionately impacted by this. So the students took text data from Facebook, they did this in teams, and they came up with some solutions about how can we reach those who are in this unfortunate situation. So we had first place winners and also second place winners. We're looking to do it again in the springtime with a different topic. Stay tuned. It's still, I can't talk about it yet, but it should be really cool. So what are some other topics that data science is impacting, and particularly those of the African diaspora? So facial recognition. This article appeared in 2020 from the New York Times, where Robert Julian Brock Williams was wrongly accused by an algorithm. So imagine coming home from work, you see your wife and kids on the lawn, the police come up and handcuff you in front of your family, take you downtown, accuse you of stealing from some upscale boutique, say it's you, and you're like, it's not me, it's not me. But even so, they're going to take your mugshot, fingerprints, DNA, and they held him overnight. And it was not him. And you can see he said, no, this is not me. You think all Black men look alike. Well, these facial algorithms, when we look at people of color, when we look at African Americans, some of them do think that all Black people look alike. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And here the detective said to his partner, I guess the computer got it wrong. So this is an area of concern, how we are using these facial recognition software to arrest people. And it impacts not only them, but it also impacts their family. And we need to do our part to make sure that it is used in an appropriate way, and that we're actually being honest with the models and what they do and what they can't do. Another example is voting suppression. This is how the Trump campaign used big data to deter Miami-Dade's Black communities from voting. This appeared in the Miami Herald in 2020. Essentially what happened was they used a computer algorithm to analyze voter data to learn who could be manipulated to not vote. So some people call this the modern day Jim Crow, grabbing people's data from different sources, marking voters for deterrence, meaning they could be deterred, prevented from voting, and then use targeted advertisements, disinformation, misleading messaging to get them to not vote. So in this case, 25% were Black, even though they made up 13% of voters. Now this went before the, This went before the Senate Judiciary Committee, And Christopher Wiley said Cambridge Analytica, which is the company, offered voter disengagement as a service in the United States, and there are internal documents that I have seen that would make reference to this tactic. The firm would target African-American voters and discouraging them from participating in elections. So is data science being used in voting? Absolutely. Are we using it in the most fair, reasonable, ethically sound way? Maybe not. So there's also some work that needs to be done there to make sure that this type of stuff doesn't happen and people stay informed. We also see, excuse me, how data science is being used to build predictive policing models. The idea is, can we predict what and where something is likely to happen so we can minimize risk to all parties, those of the community and those in law enforcement. However, these models are designed to learn and reproduce patterns in data. But if the person who's inputting the data, interpreting the data, creating these models and relationships has their own bias that they're injecting, or maybe they're not including something that should be included, these models could replicate and in some cases amplify biases that could cause harm. So here, using PredPol in Oakland, California, Black people would be targeted by predictive policing at roughly twice the rate of whites. This is in contrast to the estimated pattern of drug use by race, where drug use is roughly equivalent across racial classifications. So this last year, 2020, there was a big outcry from the mathematics community to not work with police departments because this was happening. Predictive policing was over targeting Black people. I'm not sure if complete disengagement is the answer, but I think that we need more diverse individuals involved in the development and the creation of these models. So to basically put these biases in check and make sure that they're not causing harm. We're also seeing artificial intelligence in drug discovery. So there's at least, right, this is the lower bound, 230 startups using AI in drug discovery. So for example, Data for Cure, they're using AI to infer and organize knowledge from thousands of genomic, phenotypic, and clinical data sets. So this will, in theory, allow new targets and biomakers repurpose drugs and identify disease pathways amenable to combination therapy. There's a challenge here. If we're going to organize knowledge from thousands of these clinical data sets, oftentimes these data sets are not representative of the US population, and they don't have enough people of color in them to actually be in what we would call valid validity. So there's a big advancement at the National Institute of Health to actually address data in health. And for someone like me, while we are using AI data science in drug discovery and creating treatments, if people like me aren't included in the data set, I could go get help, and it may not be a good look for me. It may be my end, because what they're using to inform the drugs, to inform these health services, is based off of data sets that are skewed towards the white population and not the rest. So that's a big problem. And here, this was back in March of this year, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, authorized their first machine learning-based screen device to identify certain biomarkers that may indicate COVID-19 infection. And again, if these machine learning algorithms don't take into account diverse data from different people, we could be in trouble. So the health industry the train is moving down the track. So how can we ensure that, number one, the data comes from diverse populations, and number two, those who are actually doing the data science understand some of these cultural implications that could really inform either a machine learning model to be effective or perhaps ineffective when we try to teach somebody with health. So this is a big field, and it's emerging. So here at the Atlanta University Center, I have mentioned that Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, he was a professor of sociology and also history and economics back in the day. And he did this work. If you don't have the book, get the book. Usually I don't tell anybody I don't read books. You know, I'm a daughter of an author, so I don't read books. However, I like picture books. So this one is a great picture book. He wrote a data portraits that visualize Black America. So here, this is the cover of it, and this is what is known as the Du Bois spiral, where he's looking at the value of Black Georgians' house and other artifacts, and how did it increase over the years. So this first little bit is the home value here in 1875, and then it increases as the year goes on. And then notice here, this is the last one. And what he's saying is, as time goes on, these home values increase. And he also does a tongue-in-cheek remark saying, without the help of the government. And so he uses these data visualizations in unique ways to describe what's going on. And so my thing is, oftentimes I feel like he's kind of looking, making sure that we're doing whatever we're supposed to be doing to really tell the story of Black America, to train the next generation to go in and really address some of these concerns that have impacted our communities negatively, so that we can provide a positive impact. So this past September, we held our first virtual student data science symposium, where we had people come in. If you missed it, all good. Check us out on YouTube. All the presentations are there. We had 19 HBCUs represented, and we also created an HBCU data science resume book that featured 76 students from 18 HBCUs to connect them with job opportunities and also graduate school. So that was a really fun effort to do. We also, I invite you all to continue joining with us. We have a data science seminar series this week on November 12th. The other Dr. Washington, Dr. Nikki Washington from Duke University, is going to talk about why cultural competence matters. So she's a really good speaker, and she's going to talk about that interplay between cultural competence, computer science education, and data science. And what does that all mean? Because when people think she's a computer scientist by training. So when people think of computer science and cultural competence, usually it's like oil and water, but she blends it nicely. So I encourage you to go to that talk. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about cybersecurity. So again, all of these presentations we house them on our YouTube and also our Facebook page. So if you're a student, you're thinking, well, okay, this sounds great. I'm excited. I got to do this. If I graduate, what can you actually do with data science? This is from Fisk University, which is an HBCU in Nashville, Tennessee, and the first institution in the state of Tennessee to have a data science major. So I love their graduation map and how they think about the trajectory, the growth trajectory of going from undergrad to this to getting a job. So here, some companies, actually Google, Microsoft, Amazon, all these people are coming to Atlanta. It's pretty crazy. Deloitte, et cetera. So there's a lot of different companies, government agencies, even companies you wouldn't think about hire data scientists. NSF had data scientists. There's selected job titles. It can be anything from data scientist to software engineer, web developer, game developer, network administrator. There's so many different titles for a data scientist or one that employs data science work. And there's also research and graduate studies in data science. I mean, there's from PhD programs to master's programs to, working research and careers and labs. And then there's other related jobs, anywhere from government, marketing, law. There's data privacy in the legal field is, as you can imagine, is a hot topic. And of course, I would be remiss without saying that some people say that, astronomy, maybe they were the first data scientists. I'll just leave it there. I live for the physics too. Duke that out with the data scientist. So what does a data scientist actually do? So this is from the APS website. So they say that it involves analyzing, and I agree with them, it involves analyzing data and designing and developing models to predict how something will behave based on data and how it has behaved in the past. So sometimes we're looking at predictive models. Sometimes we want to describe what's going on or just make sense with a whole big mess of information or data. So what are some typical activities that a data scientist does? You could develop, design, machine learning and other models. You could select, debug existing models. So it's a lot of computation there. Perform some analysis, either statistical or whatever. The types of analysis you could do and develop at this point are endless, since it's still a budding field. Often to make decisions about products or projected audiences, and to gain insight that is of use to someone. Usually we think about the client in mind, The client could be other researchers, the client could be an industry person, the client could be your professor, right? Or the client could be your fellow student. So I always think about data science with the end user in mind. Also could be to conduct research to learn more about the field. And a lot of data science work is working in teams. Teamwork is not easy. You know, there's a thing called team science, and a lot of people publish in this because people recognize it's a non-trivial feat. And whenever I have my students do teamwork, I always go through like team science, let's go through what this is. But it really is a lot of teamwork because you have the context the data lives in. So you need that somebody who's an expert in that field, the disciplinary expert. But you also have all these different data science techniques, and you need that interplay between the data science and the context in which it's lived so you can really bring forth solutions. So it really needs teams that are interdisciplinary. So if I want to get into this thing of data science, what education and training does one need? I think really you just need a willing spirit just to learn and grow, essentially. So APS does say that if you have a bachelor's in physics or other scientific computational field, this could be sufficient. Master's, PhD is often preferred just to have some advanced degrees. Familiarity with machine learning, databases, and statistics. And people always ask, well, which programming language? My recommendation is always at least 2, and that's just the lower bound. The more languages one has, I think the better off they'll be. Back in my day, you could get away with 1. I mean, I learned on Pascal, so I'm old. So you could learn 1 language and you were good. Nowadays, you need to learn at least 2, if not more. So ramping up those programming skills is very valuable. Now, how do you do that? There's additional training you could do. There's a bunch of online free courses, and this is both students and faculty and everybody. Coursera. I actually watch Coursera training videos as I wash my dishes. It's like my TV. Data Camp is another one. Data Quest, edX, LinkedIn Learning has some good courses. Udemy. I mean, there's a whole bunch of online free courses that one can do. Also, maybe your institution, either through courses there, independent study. I got started by actually leading independent studies in data science with students who were just ready to learn. And I was learning right alongside with them. Super fun. Also research project. And then on your own, you can create your own research project as a hobby. Get some results and share them. Maybe share them on GitHub, but share your results. So some people just kind of start this as a hobby. So there are different ways to kind of look at how do you get this training needed to go forward. And oftentimes people will, right now, getting certificates is a thing, right? Back in my day, it was you have to get a degree, BS, MS, whatever, right? But now getting their certificates in data science and the different types of certificates, that could also be a nice valuable currency to show that programming skills, data science skills have been acquired. So down here at the Atlanta Data Science Initiative, I always say that teamwork makes the dream work. I could not do all this work without an amazing team. That includes Bettina Gardner, Administrative Director, Manoa Farmer, who's our data analyst, Tommy Taylor Jr., who's our communication specialist, and Carolyn Rhodes, who's our recruiting coordinator, interfacing with industry. So really the whole team, and we're growing, expanding, and hiring. Yeah, I gotta hire. We're committed to advancing data science, AI, machine learning, cybersecurity techniques that address ethics and bias with a focus on topics that impact Black America. And I just got to give a shout out of praise, it is Sunday, to my sponsors here, Coca-Cola Company and SAP. We work alongside them so closely, and actually on Wednesday, they're going to do a skill up in data science. Okay, so if you're a student, you want to do it, just let me know. I'll let you in, even though it's for the AUC. But if you tell me you saw me here, just send me an email. I can get you in. It's on Wednesday from 5 to 7 on how to upskill and get that data science gig, resume and interview writing and stuff. We also have Truist Bank on board, United Health Group, Uber, most recently Google. So we're really excited about all of these partnerships. And the way we see partnerships is that they do give us money, but it's about saying, what can we do together? Like doing this program for students, how can we do this together? So yeah, and we're really excited about our Google support, and that's actually going to support our faculty, our social work faculty at Clark Atlanta, to do a social work dating data training core for their for social work students. Be the first of its kind. It'd be so cool. I'm so excited. So with that, thank you for listening. I see that people have been writing in the chat. I can't read and talk at the same time. So I guess at this point, we're gonna go to the Q&A. Is that right, Dr. Alexander?
That's correct. And on that note, this is a wonderful talk. I really thoroughly enjoyed this. And we're gonna hand it over to our President-elect, Hakeem Lersi.
Hakeem, I think you're moderating the questions.
Yeah, and I've been putting some responses there in the chat.
All right. So since you have already started responding to them, why don't we how about you just read it and give your answer?
Okay. Yeah. So somebody talked about the AI for All program at community colleges. So Miami-Dade, we joined AI for All this fall, and Miami-Dade did too. They have a community college and bachelor's degree. And so we really enjoyed working with them and learning from them how they're going to do this AI for All. So AI for All initially started more in the high school arena, and now they're gravitating towards the undergraduate. So we really enjoyed working with them. So someone said, how would you incorporate data science into an existing physics class, like say undergraduate course in quantum mechanics? William Radcliffe, you must be reading over my shoulder as I was typing a proposal this morning down at the Renaissance restaurant there. So I'm actually, yeah, if you want to join in, let me know. So we're actually writing a proposal where a part of it would be to encourage and provide a workshop for STEM faculty to develop data science modules for relevant courses across the STEM disciplines. So physics would be in there. And so that would be the question. One of the things we're looking at is what courses do we want to target? And then we also have trained, past tense, and are continue to train our faculty in data science, either through those certificate programs I talked about, and also Clark Atlanta for the last 2 summers, led by Dr. Eric Mintz. They've hosted a training and research program for faculty and students. So a lot of faculty at Clark Atlanta have had that data science training. I think you need to understand the data science first, and then think about, well, how can it be applicable into what I'm teaching and how I'm teaching? And so hopefully I'll have a better answer, but hey, if you want to get in on that grant, let me know. It's due like next week. Yeah, that's how it goes, the life. And someone said for the data, I think same person, data in the African diaspora course, is there thought of extending it to work on doing data science related to issues such as redistricting? Yeah, right. So there's racial gerrymandering, redistricting, and we also hosted Data and the Black Vote as a seminar, which is on our YouTube page. Check that out. It was actually a really good panel that talked about this racial gerrymandering, picking district lines to basically skew the votes in a racially charged way. So the data in the African diaspora course, we don't govern which topics, we govern like encourage certain learning outcomes and the structure and that sort of thing. But there is flexibility as far as the application, so it is relevant to current day. Morehouse, the other week, just got their data in the African diaspora course approved. And since Morehouse is all male, they're going to actually focus on data sets that impact Black males. So there's, yeah, I'm really excited to see how that course will evolve and to see, where that will go. So to answer your question, probably so, but I'm kind of with my administrator hat on. I don't get down and dirty tell faculty what to do. I tell them to tell me what to do so that I can support their efforts and where they're going. We are actually working on developing how can we interplay data science with prosecutors' offices. So that's something that we're working on, developing a workshop around that to equip faculty to address that. So someone said, so glad to see ethics here. Yeah, you got to have ethics. You got to have validity, right? We want your data science to be valid. Let's see. There's a lot being done with using location data to see what happened with voting. Yeah, that's a big one. Coded bias, snap, Craig Mosey. Coded bias touches on these issues. Yeah, coded bias is a great dinner and a movie on the weekend, definitely. Let's see. Okay, so I'm just going through the chat. I guess people put questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to jump over to that. Someone says Python has one for now. Some people call Python like an all-purpose cleaner sort of thing. The others like R and Julia. One reason why I like Julia programming language is because emojis can be icons, but hey, Yeah, so going into the Q&A, how can I access the why cultural competence matters? Is it open? Yes, it is. I'm going to see if I can grab the link to her talk, and I'm going to put a link in the chats if you can grab it there. I guess I can put it in both of them. Our events for the data science initiative, and anybody can come to that. It will be open. So come check it out, register, and come hang out with us. Someone said, any thoughts on incorporating? Okay, we talked about data science curriculum, lab, undergraduate quantum.
I just want to add to that. So when I started in data science, working with the now the Vera C. Rubin Space Telescope. So I created some labs that were incorporated. We had an astronomy senior lab that were, basically, access a database, read in some columns of data, do stuff with it, put out some visualization. Right? So if you're interested, I'll share that with you. But it's using archive data.
Nice.
Astronomical data.
So Dr. Lachey, I'm going to be coming back to you soon. Because we're actually writing it, Radcliffe too. We're writing, you got to hustle, right? Hustle hard to go home sort of thing. We're writing an NSF includes proposal, not due till end of January, but essentially it's a network on network to network HBCUs around data science. And we want to interplay with the Black STEM professional societies, because there's a lot of data science that impacts physics. Obviously, data science and engineering, data science and math, data science and chem, right? So we actually want, so you'll be getting an email from me soon-ish to see how we can reconfigure that and how that would look. So we're just, yeah.
All right. So any more questions for our esteemed speaker? All right. Well, let's thank Dr. Washington for being amazing and helping to educate us with what you guys are doing there. Is amazing stuff.